This is ongoing class. It is not a talk, it is a class. Last month I told you I want you to be well-informed Buddhist. The Pali word to describe a well-informed Buddhist is Kalyana Uttujana. Or we should say Kalyana Upasaka or Kalyana Upasika. And in order for one to become a Kalyana Upasaka or Upasika, Upasaka means a male and Upasika means female. So in order for one to become Kalyana Upasaka or Upasika, one should know the 5 aggregates, the 12 bases, 18 elements, and what else? In the list. 18 elements, and then 4 noble truths, and then dependent origination, and 37 members of enlightenment. So the commentators stated that a person who is to be a well-informed Buddhist should know these topics of Buddha's teachings. So since I want you to become well-informed Buddhist, you should know these topics. And the first group is 5 aggregates. And last month we studied the first of the 5 aggregates. Now first, what are the 5 aggregates? Rupa Khanda, aggregate of matter. Vedana Khanda, aggregate of feeling. Sanya Khanda, aggregate of perception. Sankhara Khanda, aggregate of mental formations. And Vijnana Khanda, aggregate of consciousness. So these are the 5 aggregates. And we studied the first aggregate, Rupa Khanda, aggregate of matter, last month. And we have not come to the end of it yet. So please look at the last page of this note. There, Rupa Khanda. Now, Rupa Khanda consists of material properties, and there are altogether 28 material properties. So these material properties are what we call Rupa Khanda or aggregate of matter. And these 28 are first the 4 primary elements, the element of earth, element of water, element of fire, and element of air. And next, dependent ones, 24 dependent ones. That means 24 that are dependent on the 4 primary elements to arise. If there are no 4 primary elements, these 24 cannot arise. So in order for them to arise, they have to depend on the 4 great or primary elements. So they are called dependent ones. The first group, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, they are actually senses. And then second group are the corresponding objects of these 5 senses. So form means color or visible object, and sound, odor or smell, taste, and tangibility, touch. And tangibility has not been given a number, and asterisk is put there, because tangibility is actually not a separate material property, but the combination of the earth element, fire element, and air element. So the combination of 1, 3, and 4 of the primary elements is what we call tangibility. So it has no number. And then we have 2 genders, femininity and masculinity. And the next is the heart base, the base of many types of consciousness. And the next, number 17, is life faculty. That means something in our body that keeps our body from, say, decomposing, that keeps our physical body alive. And that material property is called life faculty. And the 18th is nutrition. And nutrition can be found in any material property. And I told you these 18 are the what? Real, right. The real rupa. They are the real rupas. They are the object of Vipassana meditation. So when we practice Vipassana meditation and try to see rupa, and we try to see these 18 or say one of these 18. Now this time we will study the remaining 10 and probably to the next aggregate. Now, what is the next? Number 19. Element of space. Now, there are different kinds of space mentioned in Pali books. And this element of space is not the space we know, the outside space, or when we talk about space or spaceship or space travel, that is another kind of space. The element of space here is the space between different groups of material properties. Now, these material properties, when they arise in groups. In groups of 8, in groups of 9, in groups of 10, and so on. Inside the group, there is said to be no space. They are stuck to each other so that there is no space between each material property. But between one group and another, there is what is called space. And so that space between groups of material properties is what is called element of space here. So it is not space outside, not space when we say space travel or say space shape or whatever. This space is to be found between the different groups of material properties. Maybe we can visualize groups of material properties as, say, balls or something, and when the balls are put together, there is space between these balls, something like that. Now, material properties are very, very small, and so the space between them is also very small. We cannot see with our naked eyes. But nowadays people say that there is so much space in the world, say in the earth, that if you take all space from the earth, the whole globe, the earth, would be just the size of a golf ball. So if we can take all space out of the earth will be as small as a golf ball. So there is so much space in the world. So you look at the glass. We don't see any space in the glass, but if we put it under a very powerful microscope, then we may be able to see that there is space in what we think to be a very solid thing. So this conforms to what the Buddha taught here, as that there is space between different groups of matter. And so even in a block of iron or steel, there is still space. So that is what is called space here. So that space actually is nothing, right? No substance, actually no material property. But it comes to be called space when there are groups of material properties put together. So that is why it is called material property. But actually it is not material property. But it has something to do with material properties, groups of material property. So it is included in a list of material properties. Now the next two are bodily intimation and verbal intimation. Now, when we want to let somebody know our wishes, know our wants, so we use gestures. If we want to call someone, what gesture do we use? In our countries? Right. So we put the palm down and then this means please come here. But in this country this means bye-bye. And in our country, to call a person like they do here is impolite, right? Right. So these gestures differ from, say, culture to culture. But by these gestures, we let the other people know our inner intentions or inner wishes. Now, this finger is used, the index finger is used when we want to warn somebody or when we want to threaten somebody, right? So, say at a school, if the teacher wants to scold a student, something like this. So, if someone put up his index finger and point at you, shakes at you, that means you are warned or you are threatened. And it is interesting that this finger is called in Pali threatening finger. So if you want to threaten somebody, you use this finger. So there are many kinds of body intimation. If you want to say yes, what do? You nod, right? Then if you want to say no, you shake your head. So without saying anything, just by bodily gesture, you let other people know whether you agree to it or not. So these are called bodily intimation. Now, bodily intimation is not the body itself, not the movement of the body itself, but some quality in that movement of the body which makes us know the intention of another person. So that's some quality, what is called bodily intimation. So the body itself is not called bodily intimation, or just the movement is not called bodily intimation, but some quality there in the movement of the physical things which let us know the other person's intention. Because if movement is to be called bodily intimation, then the movement of the trees could be called bodily intimation, something like that. Although the trees move, we do not know what the tree meant to us, right? So bodily intimation means some quality that goes along with movements of the body, especially in a living being. Then the next one is called verbal intimation. You know this. What is verbal intimation? Just speaking or speech. Now, actually, not the speech itself, but something inherent in that speech that makes us understand. Because speech is sound, right? So if it is sound, it must be number 11. So it is not the sound itself. See, so now I am saying words. I am producing sounds, and you are hearing the sounds and you are understanding me. So the sounds, in the sounds I produce, there is something that lets you know what I mean. And that quality is what is called verbal intimation. So by these two kinds of intimation, we communicate with each other. Sometimes just by bodily gestures, and sometimes by way of speech, by talking to each other. Since they are not real material properties, they are classed among the 10. They are just some quality or some mode of the appearance inherent in the movement of the body and in the sound we produce when we speak. And bodily intimation and verbal intimation both are caused by mind or ceta, consciousness. Now the next three, material lightness, material softness, and material adaptability. Now these three always go together. We will find these three also in the cetasikas. Now, sometimes, say we feel light in our body, especially when the weather is good, or when we have eaten suitable food, or just when we are happy. See, our body seems to be light. And also, when our body is light, there is something like softness in our body. Softness means pliancy. That means lending itself to be done something to it. And also there is what is called adaptability. That is also, for example, when gold is, what do you call that? Heated. It becomes soft and it becomes pliable, and so you can make it into any ornament easily. So that kind of thing is called adaptability. So there are also some modes of material properties, not the material properties themselves, but some qualities or some modes of material properties. When we are unhappy, there is no lightness in us, no softness, no adaptability. When we are sick, there is no lightness in us, and so on. So these three qualities, lightness of material properties, softness and adaptability, are sometimes caused by consciousness, sometimes by climate, heat or cold, or sometimes by food, by nutrition. Then the last four. Now, in order to understand the last four, we should know that there are three stages of existence of anything which is conditioned, both of mental things and of material things. Now, what are these three stages or three phases of existence? Arising, continuation, and death or disappearing. So these three are called the three phases of existence or three stages of existence. If anyone has these three steps, these three stages, then we call it, we say it exists. So if we say something exists, we mean that it has these three stages of existence. It arises, then it stays a little for a while, and then it disappears. So these are the three stages of existence. Since these three stages of existence are common to all conditioned things, material properties also have these three stages. Consciousness has also these three stages. Mental factors have also these three stages. And these three stages are called characteristics in Pali, Lakkhana. So these last four are also called characteristic material properties. Now, why are there four instead of three here? Now, it is explained in our commentaries that the first of the three is here divided into two, number 25 and 26. So the first, arising and growth of matter, and also continuity of matter. Continuity of matter does not mean continuation into the second phase, but it is still the first phase or first stage of existence, but just a little bit after the arising. And here Buddha described them as the first as two, so altogether four, because when Buddha taught, he always looked at the minds of his listeners, and if the minds of his listeners have some familiarity with the four, then he will describe them as four. so that they will readily understand and become enlightened. If they are familiar with just three, then Buddha will say that there are only three phases of existence, and so they understand easily and they can get enlightenment. So Buddha had these different ways of teaching to different people. So here it is said that Buddha followed the inner dispositions of his listeners, and so he described here the three characteristics as 4 characteristics here. The first one, he divides the first one into 2. The first appearance and just a little bit continuation, but it is not continuation into the second phase, because the second phase is here described as aging of matter. So continuation or staying for some time means it has aged. It is getting old moment by moment. And the last is called here impermanence of matter. That means dying or disappearing. So the first 2 are arising, and number 27 is continuation, and number 28 is disappearance or death. So in this list, these 3 are described as 4, and they are called characteristic material properties. So altogether there are 28 material properties, but that beginning with number 19 up to 28 are, as I said, not real material properties, but some aspects or some modes or some qualities of the real material properties. But since they have something to do with the real material properties, they are classed as material properties in this list. And so we say there are 28 material properties. And these 28 material properties are what we call aggregate of matter. Now, I think I have explained the meaning of aggregate, right? Did I?
I don't recall. You did.
I did, right? So, now, aggregate here means not the group of these 28 or group of 18 or group of 10. Each one can be called aggregate. So the element of earth, the only one element of earth can be called an aggregate. The same with water element, fire element, air element, and so on. Why? Why it can be called aggregate while there is only one earth element. Now, even though there is only one earth element, this earth element can belong to the past or to present or to future. So if there is a division into past, present and future, then it can be called an aggregate. Sometimes it belongs to internal and external. Sometimes it is divided as subtle and gross. Sometimes it is divided into lowly and lofty. Sometimes far and near. So if anything is divisible into past, present and future and so on, then that can be called an aggregate, although if it may be only one. So when we say aggregate of matter, we do not mean the group of all 28 material properties, but each one of these material properties can be called an aggregate of matter. The same will apply to aggregate of feeling and aggregate of perception. Now, among these 28, there are 8 which are called inseparable. That means they cannot be separated physically. We can separate them in our mind. We can separate them in our mind and say, this is earth element, this is water element, and so on. But physically or in a lab, we cannot separate them one by one. So there are 8 of them. And which are these 8? They are shown with crosses. Element of earth, water, fire, air, form, odor, taste, tangibility, and nutrition. So they are called 8 inseparables. There are 9 crosses, right? Yeah, but we don't count tangibility because it's included in earth, fire, and air. So we say there are 8. So wherever there is material property, there are always these 8 inseparable properties. So however small you can divide an atom, in the smallest particle there are these 8 material properties. They cannot be separated. And then there are some material properties which can be deficient in some beings. Now, there are some people who are born blind, who are born without eye sensitivity or ear sensitivity and so on. So they can be deficient. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. Now, it is said that Brahmas have no nose, tongue and body sensitivity. Although they look like human beings, they do not have sense of smell, sense of taste and sense of the bodily touch, because they think that these 3 are not necessary for the spiritual life. The eye is necessary for seeing the Buddha, and the ear is necessary for hearing the Dhamma. So they leave these 2, and for the other 3, they develop a sense of disgust or something when they practice meditation and develop jhana. So as the result of such jhanas, when they are reborn as Brahmas, they lack these 3 sensitivities. So you can hit the Brahma and it will not feel anything at all. So in the Brahmas, nose, tongue and body means sensitivity are deficient. And then femininity and masculinity, so they can be deficient in some beings. So there are some beings who are neither male nor female, so they lack both femininity and masculinity. So these can be deficient in some beings. And if a being is not deficient in any of these material properties, how many material properties that being will have? 27. Because either masculinity or femininity, not both.
Someone had both.
Now, on the right side, you see the causes. So some material properties are caused by karma, some by Cheta, some by climate, and some by nutrition. So if you want to follow further, you may read about them in the Manual of Abhidhamma, written by the Venerable Narada Thera. So I will not go into details of all these because it will take too much time. It is semi-Abhidhamma now. So those shown with K are caused by karma, and shown with C are caused by Cheta, Cl, climate, and N, nutrition. So if you look at those caused by Cheta, now earth element can be caused by Cheta, water element also, but since they are caused by Cheta, they arise in living beings and not outside. Okay, this is the first aggregate of matter. Now, what is the second aggregate? Feeling aggregate. Now, we have different kinds of feelings, right? Sometimes we have pleasant feelings, sometimes unpleasant feelings, sometimes neutral feelings. Now, pleasant feeling also, sometimes we touch something soft and then we have pleasant feeling. Sometimes we think of something and then we are happy and we have pleasant feeling. So pleasant feeling can be connected with bodily touch and also just in the mind. Unpleasant feeling is the same. So when we hit ourselves against something, there is unpleasant feeling through physical contact. Sometimes we are sorry, we have unpleasant feeling thinking of something. So there are two kinds of pleasant feeling and unpleasant feeling. That which arise through contact with tangible objects, and that which arises through contact with non-tangible objects. And then the last one is neutral. Neutral is only through mental contact, not through physical contact. Through physical contact there can only be two, either pleasurable or not pleasurable. So there are altogether how many kinds of feelings? 5 kinds of feelings. And feeling here means not in the body, but in the mind. What we call feeling in the body is just the material properties, the good material properties or bad material properties. But the experience of it in our mind is what we call feeling. So actually when we say feeling, we mean the feeling in the mind, or feeling which is a mental factor. And that one feeling is called aggregate of feeling. Now, one pleasant feeling is called aggregate of feeling. One unpleasant feeling is called aggregate of feeling, because feeling can be divided into past, present, future, external, internal, external, and so on. And this feeling is one among the 52 chaitasikas, 52 mental factors. So number 2 in 52 mental factors. So that number 2 mental factor is what we call the aggregate of feeling. Now the third is what? Sanya, sanyakanda, the aggregate of perception. Now, I don't really understand the meaning of the word perception. It's difficult. So I'll explain the Pali word sanya. Sanya means making a mark. Now, you see someone today, and then tomorrow when you see him, you remember, oh, this is Mr. A, whom I saw yesterday. Now, why are you able to recognize him? Because you make a mark in your mind. Say, this man, say, with hair in this style, and tall or short or big or small, this man is Mr. A. And you make a mark. And so that mark, making mark, helps you to remember him, to recognize him when you see him again. And that marking is what is called sanya. So we do marking every time we come across an object. Before we know what we are doing, we have already marked it. And that marking may sometimes be wrong, a wrong marking. So we have false sanya as well as true sanya. Suppose you see something, say, long in the dark, and then you think it is a snake. That means you have marked it as a snake, but actually it is a rope. So that is a false sanya. And false sanya can be very real to you. You will jump on that rope because you think it was a snake, it is a snake. So making mark is what we call sanya. And it is compared to carpenters making marks on timber. When carpenters build a house, they make a mark here and there, and this is to be cut off, or this is to be taken, and this is to put here or there. So when they see the marks, they know where to put it or what to do to it. So in the same way, we make marks every time we come across an object. And then with the help of that marking, we remember it when we come across it again. So this sanya helps us to remember things. If we cannot remember things very well, that means our sanya is weak. If we have a strong sanya, then we will remember things very well. And this sanya goes together with sati, mindfulness. So strong sanya is a proximate cause for mindfulness. And that sanya also can be divided into present, past, future, and so on. And so this one sanya is called aggregate of perception. Now the next one, sankhara khanda, aggregate of mental formations. Now if you look at the list of mental factors, what is number 4? Cetana, right? Cetana means, see, it's translated as volition. Now when you do something, there is this kind of prompting or something, prompting you to do something, and that is called volition, or you call it will, no? You will something. So this cetana is this cetana arises with every type of consciousness. And this cetana, when it arises with wholesome consciousness and unwholesome consciousness, it is called karma. So Buddha said, I call cetana karma. Having willed, people do actions by body, by speech, and by mind. So that volition, that willing in the mind is called cetana, and that is what Buddha called karma. But not all cetana is called karma, because cetana accompanies every type of consciousness, but the cetana we call karma accompanies only the wholesome consciousness and unwholesome consciousness. Now for your information, there are different types of consciousness: wholesome consciousness, unwholesome consciousness, resultant consciousness, and functional consciousness. So among them, we take only wholesome consciousness and unwholesome consciousness. And cetana accompanying wholesome and unwholesome consciousness is called karma. Now this cetana, which is karma, has the ability to give results. So giving results means causing something to appear, or producing something, or conditioning something. So this cetana has another name. What? You already know that. Sankhara. So cetana is also called sankhara. Sankhara means producing or putting things together. So here, one that produces something. So cetana is called sankhara, because cetana has the ability to produce results, to condition results to arise. So this cetana is called sankhara. Now I have told you maybe more than once about the word sankhara. In Pali it is very difficult to understand the word sankhara. It has many meanings, and you have to understand according to the context. Sometimes sankhara means, like here, just cetana or karma. But when we say all sankharas are impermanent, we mean everything that is conditioned, not only cetana. All material properties and all mental states, everything in the world we call sankhara. Sometimes sankhara means prompting. You know, there are types of consciousness which are prompted, which are unprompted. And that prompting or instigating is also called sankhara. It's a technical term. So the word sankhara has many meanings, and you must understand the correct meaning according to context. Otherwise you will make wrong translations. So here the mental factor cetana is also called sankhara. That is why the remaining 50 cetasikas are called sankhara khanda, aggregate of sankhara. Actually, sankhara is the name of cetana, but here cetana and all other cetasikas, I mean cetana and all other 49 cetasikas are called aggregate of sankhara, because cetana is at the head of them.